Everybody, welcome to Stack Your Points. Thanks for watching and listening. And this is the Friday Q&A segment. So your questions, we answer them, sometimes up to an hour, sometimes it creates its own episode in and of itself. So if you have questions, always feel free to drop them on the YouTube channel or email us at stackyourpoints@gmail.com. But we hope you enjoy this week's Q&A session. Thanks for watching and listening. So we're going to move on from balance transfers to our viewer questions of the week, and viewer questions are submitted through our Discord, the Stack Your Points Discord. You can go into the podcast questions section there, ask questions there. You can submit questions via email, stackyourpoints@gmail.com, and the YouTube comment section as well. So we have a couple of viewer questions to go through. We're going to go through these tonight. We're going to try and get through them as quickly as we can. So we're going to start with a question from KidCat, and this is for Tariq, and that it would be, what would Hilton, Marriott, Choice, Wyndham have to do to win your loyalty from Hyatt and IHG? And the quick answer can't be just be a Chase transfer partner.
Okay, so I can do the other quick answer, which is just kill off Hyatt. Or just hope that they just decide to do something stupid and go dynamic pricing with all of that. But all jokes aside, I put some thought into it because Marriott was a very strong backup. It was between Marriott and IHG when I was looking at my backup for Hyatt, and the thing that kind of set me over, but put IHG over Marriott, despite me staying at more Marriotts than IHGs, was looking at the card lineup and seeing like the mid-tier $99 annual fee card and the value that I get for the status. And also the pricing, because you get the fourth night free with IHG versus like fifth night with Marriott. I don't think that, at least with the mid-tier Marriott cards, one thing that they can do is pick a partner, pick a brand. Either go full Chase or go full Marriott, obviously, or full Amex. I'm partial with full Chase, but just pick one. Like, it's complicated, convoluted. It doesn't make any sense. Also, if you're like, for the boundless card, give it gold status. And then whatever the bountiful, or I think it's the bountiful, like those $250 cards, make them worth something more than just gold status, because they just kind of suck.
You
and
can't
then also
give them gold status and have the Amex Platinum only get gold at Marriott for $695.
Hey, they're asking me what it would do to win Marriott over. I didn't say it had to be realistic. Because I was going to go into the next thing, picking a transfer partner and upping Marriott from 1 to 1 to maybe at least like 1 to 1.5, so that, you know, it doesn't feel as painful transferring like Chase or Amex points to Marriott 1 to 1, because, you know, transferring Amex to Hilton is 1 to 2. So that's kind of where I am with Marriott. And with Hilton's a hard one, because that means I got to play with Amex, and I'm not ready to I'm not ready to go to the dark side of trying to earn MR points, because it's scary to me. I'm still too young and too new to this. Now with Wyndham, the mid-tier properties are not great. I don't feel like staying at a Super 8 or, you know, whatever, if they have like a Super 8 or a Days Inn or a Howard Johnson. Like, no, like the best mid-tier that I'm seeing is like a Wingate. So like maybe if I gambled a lot and maybe try to get Caesar status, but meh. The only other one that I would actually was like putting in consideration, and one that's like a maybe, would be Choice. And I think it's just because I would need to stay at more Choice brands. I don't think I've stayed at one realistically. But like, I've looked at like Comfort Inns and Sleep Inns, and I mean, they're like nice, cheap, look like they're on par with like a Holiday Inn. And like, it would be something I would consider, especially looking at like their top end card, which is basically like Choice's version of like the IHG Premier. And it, you know, it earns well, it gives you like the status. So it's a consideration. But the problem with that is I'd have to either go full Wells Fargo or full City and kind of just start over again. So it would be like they'd have to like compress me so significantly that I would look at like earning a bunch of city points, which would be going from transferring like thank you points to chase points, which was actually kind of cool because I think choice for city and Wells Fargo are 1 to 2. So it's a maybe. I'm gonna have to think about that and I have to consider that more. So I think that covers them. So choice, I might have to look at that. Maybe I can bring some thank you points and move them over to choice, but I think I have to get the city premiere for that. So we'll see. Maybe it's worth bringing a 524 slot.
So real quick, with Hilton and Choice specifically, Hilton, you don't have to go the membership reward point earning route necessarily, even though it is 1 to 2. The Hilton cards themselves are very strong and usually have really, really good welcome offers. You can get the Hilton Honors card for currently 70,000 points and on $2,000 in spend in 6 months. They also, American Express will give you 6 months to hit most of the welcome offers. So 70,000 points, that's not a lot of points necessarily for a stay, but they also are strong earners.
80,000 right now.
Oh, 80,000 points. Okay. Well, I got 70,000 points in a free night award that I burned terribly, but Hilton also gets the part of their free night certificates are uncapped. You can get a free night certificate as a welcome offer on the Hilton Honors card or the Surpass or the Aspire. Well, the Aspire gives you a free night as part of holding the card. You can use that everywhere. You don't have to worry about a point cap of, 80,000 points or 160,000 points. You can use it at a Hampton Inn. You can use it at the Waldorf. You can use it at the Conrad. You could burn a night at Bora Bora if you really wanted to, but don't go to Bora Bora unless you're going to spend a while there. But Hilton's free night certificate super valuable, and you don't need to go into the MR point pool to really extract huge value, especially with the Surpass giving you 4 times points on online spend as well. So like those cards are super. As much as I like Chase and I like transferable currencies that I can cash out at 1 cent per point, the Hilton program is sneaky good. The only problem is you have to amass a huge pile of points, but they're super easy to get. And this is the first time I've ever heard the Super 8 being described as mid-tier. There were better properties to pick in the Wyndham. In the Wyndham.
It was what I was thinking of, and when I'm thinking of Wyndham, I'm thinking that. So unfortunately, that's kind of the connotation with Wyndham. I've stayed at a Super 8 once. I think I mentioned it once. It was a Super 8 in Houston, and the lobby was behind bulletproof glass. So yeah, no thanks. But thinking of like going to the Hilton thing, because I don't even want to touch on the Super 8 thing anymore. It's a distant memory. It's
just
something
there are better options.
I know, I understand. I said Wingate. So the Hilton cards like is something to be that I consider. Would I think about being it worth burning a 524 slot with how deep I am in Chase right now? Maybe I can just dabble with that Hilton Honors business card to see if it's worth it. And then that's like committing, what is it, like $195 annual fee, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember off the top of my head. So who knows? Or maybe when I jump down to 324, maybe I can afford to burn one. So
can I ask a follow-up question? As somebody who is deep into one ecosystem, right? I talk a lot about other cards in ecosystems that is not my primary. Anybody who is new to this podcast, I have a lot of Amex cards. Hello, I am Lady Amex. But most of the cards I'm looking at for the future outside of Hilton and Marriott are not Amex cards. Not necessarily because I'm going to hit a cap on Amex, because there are ways around that, but because the problem with being deep in one ecosystem is if something goes wrong, if you end up out of points, like I don't have many places to go for subs with Amex right now, right? Unless I start churning the business cards. I wonder if you ever think about that with Chase. And I know they have the ink train, and if that's your answer, fine, that's your answer. but I don't see you as necessarily an ink train guy long term, right? Like, have you thought about potentially looking at a Hilton or looking at another ecosystem, sort of not necessarily to replace your primary, but as a I need to diversify things. So if something happens here, if Hyatt goes to dynamic pricing, yes, there are other partners for Chase and you can pivot inside of Chase. But if your plan A and B strategy are sort of blown up, like yeah, you have Marriott to fall back on as a B and a half, right? But do you ever think of the diversification being something that you need to do? Like for a minute, put Chase down, stay under 524 so you can ink train if you want, but take a look at some other options so you're not so pigeonholed if something were to go wrong.
I haven't necessarily considered it. I think kind of like the strategy, like what I've been going with right now, is kind of going deep in that plan A, plan B strategy with Chase because I want to get the United cards. I think I have like 3 that I want to go for. And then obviously you mentioned like if Hyatt were to go dynamic, like I still have IHG. But that's why I kind of slightly considered Choice because Wells Fargo looks enticing. I do want to see like what other transfer partners they have. And maybe I think one of the things that I'll probably do, because I eventually plan on going on a cruise, is I think there's I'll use my Sapphire Preferred $50 hotel credit through the portal and maybe book it like a Comfort Inn or a Sleep Inn or one of the Choice properties just to see like what it's like and if it's comfortable and cozy and if that might be a viable option. And then I can maybe pivot to like City or Wells Fargo for that so that I can earn more Choice points or even just say why not and just jump into one of the Choice privileges cards. So it hasn't been necessarily something that I've put in the forethought of my mind, but it's something that I'm going to be putting into consideration in the future.
With that, I would just say if you're going to use your $50 credit, don't book a $67 quality inn. I would say look more at like 100, 150, or see what you can find in the Ascent collection. You don't have to book the Ascent collection, but look at don't bottom of the barrel scrape just to say that you did that property, that collection of properties.
Fair. I only said that because I was actually looking at like a Sleep Inn when I was potentially looking at. I was like, it looks comfortable, and I want to say it was like maybe like $70-$80. So yes, I get it. It was low price, but I was looking at it's one night. I want to just find something like clean, comfortable because I was going to embark on the cruise the next day. But I get it.
Yeah.
And I chose a Choice hotel because I don't have like a Choice privileges account yet, and I for sure don't have status with them. So like it wouldn't necessarily hurt me or help me if I were to book it third party. Like Marriott, I have a Marriott account, and like I would still want to earn Marriott points on the off chance that I want to pivot from like IHG to Marriott. But with Choice, I don't have anything yet, so it seems like the more viable option. So I understand where you're coming from, and it's definitely something I'll take into consideration. But I was just looking at like what properties for Choice are in Galveston, Texas. So
Sure.
That would be where I'd be embarking on the cruise.
I'm just going to go with don't try to minimize just to get the max value of your credit. Use your credit as a means to an end, but don't make the credit the end to which you're focusing everything. So if it's an $80 night, cool, it's an $80 night, but don't book it because it's an $80 night. I'm only $30 out of pocket.
Yeah, no, I completely understand. Like I said, it was just one of those, just trying to find something comfortable and not be too cheap.
Yep.
Like it was the matter of finding affordability with comfort because this is also a hotel that I'd be bringing my girlfriend with. and I am not going to put my girlfriend in a roach motel. I refuse.
Wasn't implying anything along those lines. And to any creators I may have offended, I'm sorry. So I think we're good there. Tariq, did you have any final thoughts on that question?
Okay, Kat, this is for you, and anyone else that has this concussion in the thought. I pray that Hyatt never dies, and I hope Kit Kat. We talked about this before. I hope you enjoy Hyatt because I want Hyatt to pull you in. So Hyatt is great. Please stop making me think to go otherwise. Stop making me deviate. I'm not going to cheat on Hyatt. Oh, and I'm not going to cheat on my barber. And I'm not going to cheat on the woman I love. So please and thank you.
Some interesting loyalties there. As for Hyatt, I'm of many minds. The pure chaos portion of me that wants to see Chase actually make some changes in their life, because they've certainly stuck to some interesting life choices of late. I want to see that burn to the ground, and I want to see them make changes. But the only way that they're going to do that is Hyatt leaving or Hyatt going dynamic. And Hyatt leaving, they can stay with whatever they're doing. If Hyatt's going to leave Chase, please come to Wells Fargo. That's all I ask. Anyway,
if Hyatt leaves to go to Wells Fargo, I'm getting the autograph.
Great card. It's the no annual fee green card. Anyway, we'll go on to our next question, which comes from AP. He asks, who will end up with the Apple Card? This is probably the craziest bag of worms that we could open in this section. Maybe not. RJ, you're an avid Apple fan. Do you have any thoughts on who will get the Apple Card?
So here's the thing with Apple. And if you're a fan of Apple, if you have followed them at all, Apple cares a fair amount of how their partners are perceived, right? There's a reason that Hermes makes watch bands that are named in the presentation for watches, right? There's a reason that happens. It's because Hermes is a brand with a certain amount of prestige to it. Apple likes that. Apple likes to be associated with other brands that have a certain level of prestige to them. Now, here's the thing. For me, and yes, Lady Amex, all of that fun stuff, I think Amex probably fits the bill most there in terms of like, Amex will offer you 15,000 points to buy $1,000 watch, right? Or 15,000 points to buy $1,000 watch from a very nice watch brand, right? Like Amex will do that in their offers all the time. They'll also offer you, Halloween Town merch for 25% off. So like Amex will do some crazy things. I think that Amex, from a PR point of view, would be perfect for Apple. They're been around forever. They're known fair or not at times for being that type of brand. I think it would be a good partnership. I think Amex and Apple would tear each other apart because both of them want to be the party in control. So I think probably not Amex, but if they went with Amex, I feel like it would be a natural fit as far as PR and brand and prestige goes. I'm going to throw a curveball out. And I know this is going to sound weird, but go with me. And I'm excited for the reactions of my co-hosts because I haven't mentioned this company. We had a little chat before to go over some things, and we talked about this, and I didn't mention this company for a reason. I think after all they have been through with their current premier partner, that this company is interested in bringing in a partnership that will be more stable. I think they could go with Wells Fargo. Now listen to me for a second, right? Wells Fargo is a, quote, smaller bank. They're not small, but they're not Amex, they're not Chase, whatever. They have Built, but I think they want more than Built, because right now Built is sort of their premier other thing, right? Yes, they have choice cards and they're doing other things, but people associate Built with Wells Fargo more than they'll ever associate choice hotels with Wells Fargo. I think if they can get it from Goldman, who has it right now, and Goldman is begging anybody and everybody to take it, it will make Wells Fargo, it will help their PR battle, right? Because having the Apple Card is going to ingratiate a bunch of people who actually physically pull out their Apple Card. Why you would do that, I don't know, but some people do. I did it for years. I am the person who did it for years because I literally for a while just had an Apple Card. Um, I restricted myself to that for a couple of years to get some financial stuff straight. So anyway, but every time you take out your card, it has Goldman on it. And if that said Wells Fargo, I think a lot of people, if they love their Apple Card, and people love their Apple Card, test after test and study after study, people love their Apple Card. If that had Wells Fargo on, I think it could go a lot to that PR battle that we talk about Wells Fargo needing help in sometimes. Capital One, I don't think Apple is going to want Capital One because I think outside of the Venture X, Capital One is kind of a mess, and they're also dealing with the Discover merger. And I think they have too much going on right now to take on somebody like Apple, who is very demanding as a partner. Like Apple is the biggest bully in the room when they want what they want. And I don't think Capital One wants anything to do with that right now. But yeah, I think Wells Fargo, like as a sort of like a curveball, I don't think Chase wants it. I don't think Apple wants to work with Chase. They're both at the top of the pile, and I think they sort of look at each other and nod as they walk past each other. I don't think it's a relationship where they want to sit down and have dinner. I think Amex from a culture perspective is perfect, but I think they might tear each other apart if they're ever in the same room. So I think something like a Wells Fargo could be a choice that would make sense and give them something other than built that they can point to and say, hey, you got a Wells Fargo card in your pocket, Apple. People, why don't you take a look at an autograph? Why don't you take a look at, our new fancy card that we're going to bring out as well? So I think from an oddball perspective, I think Wells Fargo.
In regards to your Capital One comment, it makes sense because Capital One is just getting out of a toxic relationship with Walmart, and Walmart is a very demanding bully as well, especially being the largest retailer in the US and possibly even the world, if Amazon hasn't done it yet. So, like, I don't think they want to deal with Apple after having battle scars from Walmart. Chase, they're already dealing with Amazon, and Amazon is likely as demanding, if not more demanding than Apple. So the last thing they want to do is add that on the plate. Wells Fargo is an interesting one, especially for the PR side, because I myself, when I was looking at the built card, when I was first looking at it, I was like, cool, but Wells Fargo. And there's still that negative connotation, even though it was probably even like over a decade ago when it was with like Wachovia and all that. So that makes sense. Another one that I just wanted to ask, just out of curiosity, what about Citi? You think Citi would even entertain that? I mean, I know they have the double cash, so it's kind of their 2% card, but if they can do something with a double cash card and make it the Apple card and possibly just have it earn thank you points, because I mean they do that with their AT&T cards. So I just thought it'd be something as obscure, but that I don't
Please
know.
don't
Just
make
kind of
me
just
have a
throwing
Citi card. Please don't make me have a Citi card, sir. Please.
The
No.
only avenue that Citi would have would be, oh, well, we have MasterCards. Beyond that, like, Apple's not interested in thank you points. Apple's not going to be interested in joining whatever point system you're doing. Apple's going to do their thing independent of you. You're just issuing the card and taking the losses when people default on the card. That is your primary responsibility. That's the only thing that's kind of throwing me off with Wells Fargo is Goldman had to take a beating with all of the losses that they did on the Apple Card. If people are going lull Wells Fargo over losing $10 million a month on the Built deal, or really like $10 million a month plus the $200 that they pay Built for every card that gets opened, plus the rent fees. So like maybe that deal is somewhere around $500 million in losses, I'll say. Like the losses that Goldman's been losing has been in the billions without Apple guaranteeing those losses to Goldman. I think whatever bank they do end up going with, like, that bank would be right protecting themselves by getting Apple to guarantee the less savory credit profiles that Apple's going to force them to accept, just as some sort of insurance, because like the folks who have awesome credit, bring them in all day. It's going to be those 650 and below folks where Apple will push to get a lot of those folks accepted, and they pushed Goldman to get a lot of those folks accepted, and those are the people who just like ran up whatever they could and ended up defaulting, and that was what started piling up for Goldman. So I think whatever negotiations are happening, and I'm surprised that we're in September and we just had the iPhone event and we still haven't heard anything about Apple Card. Like, I am looking up, I'm trying to find rumors. There's no mention of any banks being interested. I think when it first came out that they were breaking their contract with Goldman, it was like, oh, well, American Express would make sense, Synchrony would make sense, Comenity could make some sense, maybe Capital One. Capital One's become like, they've had their Walmart issue, but like they've got their new trademarks that they're doing. Like, they filed 9 trademarks. Like, they have no idea what they're just super busy right now, is kind of how I think the executive from Capital One would explain things. Like, we'd love to be in on the Apple Card, but we're just super busy right now. It's probably the best way I could think of it. Synchrony, no one wants to touch Synchrony with a 10-foot pole, but everybody ends up with Synchrony. Barclays, Apple's been there, done that. They're not going to do that again. The one bank I could think of who has a pre-existing relationship with Apple prior to the Apple Card would be Citizens. They don't have as big a profile. One second. Sorry. Citizens doesn't have as big a profile as some of the other major banks, but Citizens handled a lot of the iPhone loans before the upgrade program became what it became. So maybe them. Wells Fargo can make a certain amount of sense, but Wells has to be willing to eat some more losses. And I don't know that they're the people to do that.
I think it's hard because there are certain things that we know from the Goldman deal that Apple wanted, right? They wanted a certain level of customer service. I think that cuts a lot of the banks right there. Because if you look at least the perception of like Citi's customer service, right? Like, that is not going to be, quote, to Apple standards. A lot of them right now wouldn't be to Apple standards, to be fair. But Apple demands that, right? They demand to have an app where you can actually see, if I make this payment, I'm going to owe this amount of interest. A lot of like the Capital Ones are not going to want that, right? Because that's how they make their money, especially on people who default, right? So it's got to be a company that has good customer service or will hire out for the Apple folks better customer service. Today I had to call Charles Schwab for something. And what struck me is the guy gave his full name and the city he was from. Now, could he be completely lying and sitting in, a call center somewhere else and just have a really good American accent and have a fake name and fake city? Sure. Like, absolutely. But just that simple interaction of, hi, I'm so-and-so from, I don't even remember where he said, but like for a moment, like it just like was a nice introduction into it, right? Now, Charles Schwab is not going to take the Apple Card. But it sort of, if they can get something like that, like I've had to deal with customer service with Apple, it is still better than any credit card that I have, including Amex, except for maybe the Amex Platinum line, which is a sort of separate thing. It's not the concierge, it's the actual platinum. I need your help line.
Yep.
That was the only one better. But they have to have a certain level of being willing to hire people to help. They have to have a certain level of tech savvy to be able to support this app, because Apple isn't the one who actually supports it. Goldman does. So there's a lot of things. And I know before we end this conversation, we have to go to a conversation Matt and I have had about 1 billion times just to say with it we did. I don't think Apple wants to be a bank because I don't think they want the Fed scrutinizing them. But it does make a certain amount of sense with the $11 trillion that they have, that Apple just says, we're going to make a subsidiary who is a bank. We're going to call it, Apple Bank of North America or whatever. And we're going to issue our own cards and we're going to deal with all of that. And it is possible. I don't think it's going to happen because I think they are tired of the federal government, imposing regulations. And that would be a whole host of new regulations and a whole lot of new lawyers they would have to hire. But I do think it is not a 0% option.
It could
So
also
that
just buy Apple Bank.
that kind of answers my question on that. But I guess it would be more, why not, instead of like a whole bank, maybe Apple was like kind of like a fintech company type of thing where they're like partnered with like a small bank. Like I'm thinking like Chime or Upgrade. I think like Chime is with like the Bancorp Bank or something. Maybe that's the subsidiary part of the fintech, but I think for some reason I see that being more of a possibility than just Apple just being a straight up bank for those regulation reasons.
I think the problem is that if they partnered with Chime or they partnered, even SoFi maybe a little better. Like, I think Apple wants to bring a CEO on stage that everybody knows the name of, or the people who should know the name of, right? Like Matt loves to ask the questions and like, hey, the altar to Jamie Dimon, right? Because we all know who Jamie Dimon is. But if they bring up, the Chime CEO, most people in that audience or most people watching at home have never heard of the CEO, don't know who they are, don't know why we should be impressed with the Chime CEO. Maybe they know what Chime is, maybe they don't. But I think Apple wants, when they bring the CEO of AT&T up, or they bring the CEO back in the day of Google up, that is a moment of, we can get this person to speak at our event. Like, we are that big that we can just demand that this person fly, because they used to be in person. Back before the COVID times, they were all in person and live, right? We can bring this person here and interrupt their day to get them on our stage. And I think Apple likes that ability. Apple likes that cachet that they have by partnering with these companies. And Chime or a company like that makes a lot of sense if you don't think about that particular aspect of it. And maybe they don't care at this point because Goldman has told them, like, this is bad for you, it's bad for us, let's break up. But I still think Apple is Apple at the end of the day, and that matters to them so much. Because a lot of why Apple is not the noise cancellation on these headphones that sounds incredible. It's the fact that they have a walled garden, which even as an Apple fan, I can admit they have, and B, the marketing and the PR and the cachet that they have.
So Apple is the Apple's problem. And it's, I mean, I don't know what they expected when they were going to get into the credit card space, because maybe they wanted to try to shake the room with credit cards, but
they wanted an easy avenue for people to be able to buy more of their product. Like reason I'm getting, part of the reason I'm getting a new iPhone is because I can put it on 24-month payments. I won't pay it in 24 months. I'll pay it in probably 6 or 8, but I can put it on 24. So say there's a month where everything's tight, I don't have to worry about it. I'll just pay them my actual monthly payment and I'll be done with it. Like, that allows a whole bunch of people, that allows a lot of college students, that allows a lot of people who are maybe tight on cash to buy Apple products. The more people who buy Apple products, the happier Apple is. It's like Amex. The more people swipe their cards to get their $7 Dunkin', the more fees Amex gets from their processing network, the happier they are. It's the same concept.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. But at the end of the day, with Apple being so demanding, no one's going to want to work with them. And I don't know who's going to even, it's a good question, like who is going to end up with the Apple card. But it almost feels like one of those things where if you want it done right, you got to do it yourself. So Apple may have to just end up getting Apple Bank in order to get this Apple Card the way they want it to, because if not, they're going to make some compromises. And I don't think Apple is the compromising type.
They generally aren't. I'm going to throw out 4 possibilities. One would be Wells Fargo, and they get Charles Scharf on the line. How likely is that? I don't know. This is intriguing. Another one that we haven't mentioned is Bank of America. They're the number 2 assets under management. I don't think the Apple Card would qualify for preferred rewards earning rates, but Bank of America would probably be a nice, safe, cuddly blanket, and they're known for cash back. They're known for relatively good customer service, not necessarily. They're not Citi. They are not American Express, but they are somewhere in the middle. So it is a well-known bank that would work. Number 3 would be they go the Citizens route, which would be kind of Apple fronting as the fintech and Apple taking on a little bit more of the customer-facing side of things, which with their app and with their customer service already through Goldman, I feel like they could get away with, whereas where Citizens will issue the card. Maybe. As long as it's not Coastal Community Bank or Bank of Missouri, I'm kind of happy with whatever the issuing bank is. And then the 4th one would just be Apple goes about it themselves. How they go about it themselves, I don't know, but they like buy a bank or they become a bank and they take on that headache of the extra regulations from the SEC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, the federal board, the whatever else, and then they take on the EU challenges. Sorry, of being a bank. But those are the 4 I'd put out there. So we'll move on from there. We're gonna go with our next question. This one will be for me. This will be also from KeyCat. He asks, now that Matt has experienced his first lounge, which I did on my most recent trip to New Orleans, is there any desire to expand his access network? I think the question Kid Cat's trying to ask is, Matt, when are you signing up for the American Express Platinum card, or are you signing up for the Capital One Venture X? The answer to those questions is no. Expanding my access network would probably be more in the form of airline-specific lounges. So am I going to go get a United card? Am I going to go get the American Airlines executive card? I don't know where on the roadmap those would be. The problem would be those are still going to be domestic. Like, I don't have an international option beyond Priority Pass. And Priority Pass with the Sapphire Reserve, while I don't have Priority Pass restaurants, Priority Pass outside of the US is still pretty good. And a lot better than Priority Pass domestically. Now, is that to say I wouldn't consider other means of access? No, I definitely would, but I'm going to be booking international business class, international first class to get those other lounges. So, is there any desire? Some, but not necessarily getting the American Express Platinum or the Venture X. So, do you guys have any other access points for lounges that you guys would consider?
How much international travel do you do? That's a question I don't have an answer to.
Me, international at the moment, none. So that is also why I'm not looking to expand to Centurion lounges outside of the United States. Like, I have to get a new passport. My passport's woefully out of date, and I'd have to go and do the global entry and do TSA pre-check. So right now, I don't have a means to travel internationally. International lounges aren't top of mind. Domestically, I could do really well with with the United lounges, though those are usually full. American Airlines flagship Admirals clubs, those are also usually full. The Sapphire lounges aren't as full, but they are filling up, and the other ones need to open. And then I don't fly out of DFW. I don't fly to DFW. I don't fly to Denver. I don't fly to IAD. So I don't have a use for the Capital One lounges. Maybe when the JFK lounge opens, but the JFK lounge is going to be in Terminal 4, which is the same terminal as the Sapphire Reserve lounge. So why would I get the Venture X for a lounge in a terminal that if I'm using, which is Terminal 4 is the international terminal, why wouldn't I just go to the Sapphire lounge?
Why? And I half know this answer, but I'm asking genuinely and not trying to be a shit stirrer.
Sure.
Why not Delta? Because you can get to LaGuardia real easy, and that is one of the nicest lounges anybody can go to, is the Delta LaGuardia lounge.
It's a fair question. In looking at the transfer currency, it's not a good transfer currency. It is a currency I would have to build up with the Delta cards. The biggest thing that holds me back from trying to jump into Delta is just knowing that I would have to go through the Delta ladder, and I would have to play the Delta upgrade downgrade game with like the platinum and the gold. But the platinum has enough value where it's like, why would I want to upgrade downgrade with the platinum if I can get silver status relatively easily by holding 2 platinum cards? I'm going to spend $700 a year. That's going to suck, but it's better than spending what, $1,300 a year for 2 reserve cards. And if I really wanted to go crazy, I can do $1,800 a year in annual fees, hold the business reserve, the personal reserve, the business platinum, the personal platinum, and get medallion gold. It's crazy. Don't necessarily know that I want to go into that. Part of it is also I am not a svelte person. Comfort Plus on a what was my partner flying? It was not a particularly large plane. They were seated in Comfort Plus. They had issues in Comfort Plus until they got onto the 727. So that's a consideration. So Delta is up there, but it just isn't top of mind.
No, that's fair. It's one of those things where with your location, especially how useful LGA is, that's when I fly from my regional airport anywhere in the world, LGA is almost always my layover. So
Yeah.
just in that vein, I had to ask about Delta because going out of LGA, I would imagine your plane would be quote full size. Like I wouldn't imagine you would have the smaller planes flying out of LGA unless you were going super local.
Yeah, that's probably not as big a concern. My bigger concern would be with the lounges with Delta is I either have to get medallion or I have to spend a lot through the reserve starting in 2025. Like the new cutoffs with the cards and the Sky Club access did put a huge break on me considering Delta full time, just because when they made those changes, the Delta, and I know they updated them, but I know that the American Express Platinum card, you can only get, 10 visits into a lounge right now. The reserve is going to be capped at 15. And like 15 visits, and it's over the course of a day. So it's 15 days. But not being like that limitation without spending $75,000 a year doesn't entice me to want to jump in if I'm not already pot committed to the program. And like I can fly JetBlue relatively easily to a good number of places, not a lot of places, but a good number of places. Domestically, I think the lower cost airlines can still provide an okay amount of value. So I'd be looking at, either transcontinental or international with Delta, which isn't a bad place to start. But in this, like, I'm not pot committed to any one airline. It doesn't make sense for me to jump into Delta without deciding that it's just going to be Delta from here on out.
I guess in that same vein, I guess I want to ask. I know you being pretty much the airline free agent. I know I'm sure we talked about United briefly, and I know like it was something you mentioned, but like why not United? I don't know how close you are to Newark in relation to your vicinity to LaGuardia. And I mean, if you wanted to do like one of the club business card, I think not saying like annual fees is like a factor for you or a limiting factor, but I mean it's the lowest annual fee. And American Airlines, I've done 2 Admirals Club lounges. My mom had the cards for I think like a year or two. They're nice, but they just up the annual fee. I think it's like $5.95.
Yeah.
And the sign up bonus in order to hit that is like business card territory in order to get the point. I think it's like 10,000 in 3 months for whatever their however X amount of points as they get.
Currently it's 7,000, but yeah, no,
No.
that's a good chunk of coin. So if I can get to LaGuardia, I can get to Newark. That's not necessarily the problem. The problem is domestically it's great. Domestically both will work, and domestically Sky Clubs will work. That's not necessarily the problem. My bigger concerns with United would be if I'm going to go in, if I'm going to go in for a penny and in for a pound, I would have to look at something like the Club Infinite card. And instead of a $95 annual fee or $99 annual fee for the business card, like the Club business card's $450 and the Club Infinite card is $525. And I'm not saying that annual fees are necessarily a major consideration, like, oh, I can't pay more than $400 for an annual fee. But if I'm going to jump in, like I have to take that into I will have to take that into consideration. And if I'm traveling internationally, like I've got to build up enough um United status where like my status would be recognized for Maple Leaf Lounges and Air Canada. And um I forget the other big European Star Alliance partner, but like making sure that I can get into international lounges because there are no United lounges like in Amsterdam, in France, in Italy, wherever I may be flying in Europe. And if I'm going the other side of the world, there's no United lounges in Singapore or Vietnam or anywhere else I may be looking to fly. So I have to make sure that I get enough Star Alliance status to get, like, I think it's Star Alliance Gold before you can get into international lounges. So that's another that's something I would have to make sure of when I'm doing international travel, when I get around to doing international travel again.
Aren't you doing sort of like analysis paralysis? Like if you don't even have a passport, and I'm not saying like you can't get one, but you don't have a
Yeah,
passport and and you and I have talked about travel, but like being a free agent has a cost too, right?
yeah,
Like one of the problems that you sometimes face is like, yeah, JetBlue can be very useful for you, but it is somewhat limited. Like I tried
yeah,
to do a couple of flights just to see, I was doing some price comparisons for something, and JetBlue is you like there flies out of my home airport. It's useless for me to go to like even New York City, Boston, a bunch of places that I would want to go. And I feel like you have almost like excluded everything because you want everything to be where you could just plug in. And I feel like for you, like yes, international is a consideration. I'm not saying it's
yeah.
not. But at this point today on September the whatever 2024, do you need to be considerate about like your international lounge experience?
Mm,
Perhaps not.
no.
I'm not saying that like you're wrong to consider every option. I'm just saying perhaps you're putting the cart 19 feet before the horse and trying to back the horse into the cart.
I feel like you're trying to call Matt Apple with the Apple Card the nicest way possible.
I'm
No.
saying that listening to you try to explain this, it feels like the person who's like, well, after college, once I get hired at the law firm, I'll be making $300,000. So then I can buy the tutor, but I can't buy a watch now because I'm going to buy that tutor. And I'm like, okay, but you could buy a Casio. Like, it's okay.
Right. But so I have access to lounges now. They're not like the sexiest lounges. All I've got is a couple of Sapphire lounges, two of which happen to be out of airports that I could fly out of with some regularity. One of those lounges being like 21,000 square feet, and apparently very nice inside. So like it's not so much like I have to shoot everything down. It's more I do have a okay base to work off of, but my base is priority pass, right? Everybody's base is kind of priority pass. I just don't necessarily see myself needing to jump into for credit card for the banks jumping into the Centurion Lounge, because then I have to justify the platinum to myself with everything else that the platinum is. It's a nice, like Lonnie says, it's sort of like a travel subscription. It's a very nice travel subscription. I don't necessarily want to sign up for that travel subscription just yet.
Oh, I
Is
don't
where I
think
am
Delta
with.
should be the partner you should pick, but I
Yeah.
do think you need to pick a partner. And I think the sooner you do that, I think it will settle a lot of other pieces for you, but you have to pick. And I think you're analysis paralysising yourself out of picking any partner because you can't find the perfect jewel diamond of the 10x everything card.
This is the podcast question that we need Lonnie for, because I had analysis paralysis, and then Lonnie just started just spilling his knowledge on all things United, and next thing I know, he's United Airlines, and now I'm United Express.
So here's the thing. I don't want to drive to New Jersey necessarily to experience all of United. Now my options, if I'm going with hubs, now my options are JFK for American and Delta for at JFK. Delta is also a hub. Delta also has LaGuardia as a hub for domestic, and now it's like for ease of use. Like American doesn't fly out of the Northeast too much. Delta would be plenty of flights. So now by that default, if I'm not willing to fly out of New Jersey or go to New Jersey to fly, which a lot of New Yorkers seem to just claim they don't want to go to New Jersey if they don't have to, then I'm sort of like forcing myself into Delta, but I don't necessarily want to do that. So it's, do I pick American just to be a contrarian and now I have to go do a whole new credit card setup? Or do I suck eggs and go to Jersey and fly United?
You already have a Sapphire reserve. You're already earning your points. Suck it up and just go to Newark, man. Well, this is coming from a Texan who has never even experienced the Northeast. So take
Don't
what I
go to
say.
Newark if you don't have to. I have been to Newark. I've driven past the Newark exits about 11 billion times. Don't go to Newark if you don't have to. But
See,
no,
that's the problem.
Do you necessarily have to go to Newark? Because I'm sure there's United clubs in JFK and LaGuardia. Yeah, you may have to do a connection in like Dulles or Chicago or wherever, but would that be worth if you have that lounge access? Because I mean, I have a United club at San Antonio, and 9 times out of 10, when I'm looking at flights, I'm going to be connecting in Houston. That's just something I just already resigned to. So it's just another thought. Would that be worth it to you if you're able to get the lounge? Like, say you're going to United and you wanting to avoid Newark as much as humanly possible.
I'm not necessarily booking my trips around what lounges I'm going to. If I'm booking my trip for nonstop, I would rather fly. To book nonstop United, I have to fly out of Newark.
Fair.
To just book United, I can book United out of LaGuardia and go to the Sapphire Lounge, but my flight from LaGuardia is going to go to a United hub that is not Newark to then fly wherever I'm going to fly. If I'm going to fly somewhere, I may as well book the nonstop flight. That is what I have to deal with. Or I could just, play the Breeze game and just point hop with Breeze and not go to lounges when I go to regional airports to fly with Breeze, which would be a terrible idea. No, I don't know that it's not analysis paralysis. I want to experience the Sapphire lounges. I don't think it's necessary that I need to expand to Capital One. There's no Capital One lounges for me to fly into or out of necessarily. Delta could make a certain amount of sense, but now I need the Delta Reserve or the American Express Platinum card. There's no other way to get into the lounge. And I don't necessarily want to jump into the airline lounge discussion until I want to jump into the airline. That's all.
I think Tariq and I let the airline lounge part go, and we were hammering you on your airline of choice.
Yeah, we basically, I mean, we have the pseudo representative for United, and then RJ is definitely the representative for Delta. So
Watch me end up with American. I'm kidding.
Honestly, it'd be
it
great
would
for the
make
podcast.
sense. It would be. And then maybe I should just step with Southwest because Lonnie already has United on block. So
Not a real airline. No, I'm kidding. No, so I think to Kid Cat's question, is there any desire to expand my access network? Some. I'm not going to go out and get the Amex Platinum. I'm not going to go out and get the Venture X. Airlines are a consideration. Airlines would probably be the route I go before I get the Centurion. Before I go to Centurion lounges, before I go to the Venture X, the Venture Lounge. I'm more likely to get a United card or an American Airlines executive card than I am one of the other two cards. Just because a $700 travel subscription doesn't make sense for me right now. All right, with that, we've got time for another question. We're going to go with, if you could fix a card by adding one multiplier to the card, then which card and multiplier would it be? This is coming from Keith. And our good friend of the podcast, SpaethCo, has added a hard mode question for this. It can't be a 2x base earning on the American Express Platinum. Tariq, if you could fix a card by adding one multiplier to the card, which card and what multiplier would it be?
Chase Sapphire preferred because that's my easy cop out. And it's either going to be make online grocery, straight up grocery, or add gas. One of those two, keep it 3x, and it's cool. So that's I'm going to do the Chase Sapphire preferred cop out. I don't care if I get tomatoes thrown at me in the comments. It's just easy. It makes sense. And I love Chase too much.
Absolutely fair. RJ?
So I gave an answer in our sort of pre-show, but I think I've adjusted the answer slightly because I think this one makes more sense and it hasn't been refreshed lately. Add 3 times gas or EV charging to the Amex Green card because that card already has sort of your travel needs outside of the Platinum taken care of. Like if you just want to travel, you don't necessarily need lounges or anything else. That card has the 3x travel, the 3x transit, the 3x dining. If you added a 3x for gas and EV charging, that would be the road trip card if you wanted MR points. Like that would be the perfect card to use. I think it would be a perfect fit. I would even remove the 3x dining and put the 3x gas because you can get the dining on the gold. So yeah, I think it would make a lot of sense because Amex doesn't really have gas on the majority of their cards. The business gold is probably the marquee one that they have gas on, and that's rotating. So you have to know what you've spent that month to get the 4x on gas.
Yeah, their only other card with a gas multiplier that really springs to mind that isn't a co-brand is the Everyday Preferred. And that's only 2x. So that's rough. My answer here is simple. Take the Chase Sapphire Reserve and slap a mobile wallet category on that sucker. 3x mobile wallet, Chase Sapphire Reserve, Chase automatically wins the game for transfer partners and redemptions at 1.5 cent per point in the Chase transfer portal. Now you've got a card at 550 that is as good as the US Bank Altitude Reserve. Doesn't have the instant gratification of your 1.5 cent per point redemption with RTR, but minimum of 1.5 cent in the pool, you'll get like whatever value you're going to get out of the Hyatt transfer, which is going to be pretty strong. I would run all my spend through that with a 3x multiplier, with a 3x mobile multiplier on the Sapphire Reserve. That would give me gas, that would give me grocery, that would give me what is it? Pharmacy. That would give me most other non-category spend, 3x. I would run away with just my Sapphire Reserve as my only card. Like, I wouldn't need a Chase Trifecta. I would have the Chase Ultimate card. So 3x mobile wallet on the Chase Sapphire Reserve. Chase would win most of the travel game at that point, in my opinion.
Chase Sapphire is going to have 3x mobile wallet, but you get hit in the head with a brick every time you use it.
How hard is that brick being hit?
Enough to give you a concussion.
You know what? CTE would be worth it.
You know what? If I end up tweeting like Antonio Brown, and if it means I get 3x mobile wallet, you know what? Put me on the newest member of CTE ESPN.
CTE is a very serious matter, but yeah, no. Ultimate reward points powered by mobile wallet on a Chase Sapphire Reserve. Everybody would talk about the Sapphire Reserve as the it card to get again. Hell, I would take this even further. You could slash the welcome offer on the Sapphire Reserve, and it's crap to begin with. You could slash it for me, and I would still make up the points with mobile wallet and the redemptions with that.
I can already hear like how credit card YouTube would make the strategy. You would just open the Sapphire Preferred, get the welcome offer, and then after a year, probably change to Sapphire Reserve to get the 3x mobile wallet if they're going to do the one Sapphire rule still.
Oh, I'd be fine with Chase like not allowing that either.
Dang.
Oh, I'm here to break credit card YouTube too on that one.
Fair enough.
I don't need the same freaking videos about, oh, you get the Sapphire Preferred, then you become the Sapphire Reserve. The Sapphire Reserve's got 3x mobile. No, just get the Sapphire Reserve. Be a big boy and pay your $550 and do that. Don't entertain a $95 crop card.
And we have our title, ladies and gentlemen.
Ooh, I win the title game. All right, so I think that's going to do it for viewer questions. As always, viewer questions can be submitted via, as I've mentioned, the comments on the YouTube channel, stackyourpoints@gmail.com, or the Stack Your Points podcast, the Stack Your Points podcast Discord. Just use podcast questions.